My name is Henrik, and today I'm going to talk about the perceived notion that we need to reinvent ourselves in order to follow the ever-changing society. My argument is this: don't. Don't follow the world, the path that the world expects from you. Instead, forge your own path. We live in a world that is constantly evolving. We see this technologically, politically, and culturally. This does not mean that you need to change your personality, who you are, and what you stand for. Instead, take advantage of your personality. Take advantage of your potential. And take advantage of your ideas. Every single person in here has a character. And within every character fall certain traits that come with every single person. This is what I call the toolbox. Some people are more creative-minded, some are more analytical, and perhaps some are more artistic. Knowing what you're good at is just as important as knowing what you're not good at. Now, the number one thing that I believe we can find in our toolbox is the trait of perseverance. Without perseverance, all our other tools can become meaningless. Without perseverance, you cannot achieve your goals in times of hardship. Now, we all know what perseverance means, but the best definition that I can find out there is that perseverance is all about doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. It's about trusting yourself and your capabilities that you can achieve your goals, no matter how difficult they may be or how long that they may take. Today I'm going to talk about 3 personal examples of how perseverance has helped me in 3 very different settings of my life. The first example is about love. The second example is about business. And the final example is about war. This is a picture of me when I was 10 years old. And it was at this age that I was in love with a girl called Delia. Now, my first interaction with Delia was one day at the school's playground. My teacher was telling me off for a reason that I can't remember. And as she was taking me back inside, I see this girl sticking her tongue at me. And I was baffled. Why on earth was this girl provoking me, challenging me? Who was this girl? But I realized that I liked her from the very beginning and that there was some sort of connection there. So that night, I scrambled to find the yearbook at home to figure out who this person was. The next day, I asked a friend of mine to pass her a note saying that I had a crush on her. Luckily, I got a note back saying that she liked me too. So I was like, great, it's settled then. But you see, unfortunately, I hadn't exactly developed the courage to go and talk to Delia, so all of our communication took place via email. I remember that my heart would almost stop every time I saw her name on my inbox. And one day it almost did stop, because I got an email from Delia saying that she didn't like me anymore and that we should remain friends. And this was like 2 days later, so it's not like we had a super long relationship. But it really was the first time that I thought and felt that I was in love. So I was completely heartbroken. But I was also a 10-year-old boy. And how does a 10-year-old react to rejection? I didn't know. I hadn't exactly developed the toolbox that I was aware of yet. So I had to rely on my instincts. And my instinct told me to try and win her back over. So I started bombarding Delia with emails, dozens and dozens of emails, which in hindsight I probably should not have done because that didn't really work. Then I tried calling Delia's house telephone number. Now that did technically work. I spoke to her mother a couple of times, but Delia was strangely never home when I called, so that didn't work. I even tried talking to Delia face to face, one of the scariest things I ever did in my life. That didn't work either. Unfortunately, the door was closed. But the lesson here is not that I failed. The lesson is that I didn't give up before I explored other opportunities for winning her back over. By persisting, I eventually developed tools and attributes that would all form part of my toolbox. I enhanced my communication skills. I found courage. And I even found the tools that helped me overcome sadness and rejection. But the story with Delia does not finish right here. I'll get back to this part a little bit later. Moving through my journey, I arrive at example number 2, which is business. At around the same age as my first love story with Delia, I started my first business when I was 9 years old. I transformed my room, and more specifically my closet, into a kiosk, and I sold candy to my family. Now, this was not a groundbreaking financial success, as you may think it was, but I loved the concept of running a business, of buying products, and dealing with customer service, which of course consisted of my mom, my dad, and my big sister, who was my best customer. When I was 15 years old, I moved out of my parents' house to go to a boarding school, and it was here that I would develop lots of ideas that would materialize into different businesses. My first real business came shortly thereafter. I started a website where you could play online flash games. It was called Game Must, and it was a spectacular failure. I actually think the kiosk I had when I was 9 years old was more profitable. But I learned a lot about different programs, advanced software, and the value of having different people on your team. My next startup attempt was a dropshipping website. I would dropship PlayStation, Xbox, and PC games from the United Kingdom to the Danish market. And at some point, some of the games that we sold were the cheapest in Denmark. But our profit margins, they weren't really that great. So our whole concept wasn't sustainable, and I had to shut down this business as well. After high school, I decided to work at Domino's so I could save up enough money to go to New York to study human rights for 1 semester. You see, politics had recently become a new passion of mine, but I always had the interest and the intrigue for business. So once I arrived in New York, I quickly found out that my real estate agent, he had lots of apartments. So I made an agreement with him, and within a few weeks, I set up a website and started offering fully furnished apartments to Scandinavian students traveling to New York. Now, while this concept, I think, was pretty good, it never really took off. And after some sound advice that maybe I should prioritize my studies, I took that advice, briefly, and then I moved to London after that semester to continue my political studies. Coming to London and studying at Richmond University was one of the best decisions I ever made. I ran for student government, I worked with the university on a number of issues, and participated in political conferences in Malaysia, Dubai, and elsewhere. It was here that I really managed to grow as a person and acquire even more tools and attributes that would also form part of my toolbox. I could probably stand here today and talk for hours about all my failed startup attempts, because the list is long. I probably failed somewhere between 7 and 10 different times. But the lesson is not that I failed, and some of them failed miserably. The lesson is very simple. I didn't give up. I kept on going until I found success. And by persisting, I developed tools within business that I didn't know I could develop, because I never studied business. All of a sudden, I knew stuff about marketing, strategic planning, leadership skills, sales skills, and so forth. But it is my interest in politics that brings me to my third and final example, war. In 2015, the war against ISIS was reaching its boiling point. ISIS controlled virtually half of Syria. They controlled the second largest city in Iraq, Mosul, and things were not looking all too good around the world. So my great idea was to go to Iraq and document the war against ISIS. Now, I can't tell you that my mom was exactly thrilled about this, because she wasn't. But the thing is, I could not understand how the international community could stand silent to the atrocities and to the genocide that are being committed throughout the region. And this is what always brings me to the great quote of Edmund Burke, which is this: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." So from 2015 to 2016, I made 3 trips to the front lines of Iraq, documenting, filming, and learning. On my second trip, I brought 4 friends from university to help produce a documentary that we were making. Now listen here. In a conflict zone, if you do not have contingency plans for right about everything, then you're bound to get screwed at one point or the other. And that's exactly what happened to us. So we arrived at Erbil. Erbil is the northern part of Iraqi Kurdistan. We arrived at 3 a.m. in the morning, just 40 kilometers from the front lines of ISIS. And our security detail had just canceled on us for the entire trip. So after we managed to arrive safely to the hotel, man, there was a lot of frustration within the team. In fact, there was so much frustration that one of our team members took the flight back home to London the very next day. So what do you do in a situation like this? You're in quite a pickle. Literally all the planning that we had been preparing for the past 6 months had in the space of 24 hours just gone down the drain. The way I saw it is we had two options. Option number one, fly back home. I didn't really like this option. Option number two, open up your toolbox. So I opened up my toolbox. Firstly, I found the tool of perseverance. I told myself that no matter what, we were going to do something despite the difficulty or delay or the shitty situation that we found ourselves in. I think that's a more accurate definition. Great. What else do I have in my toolbox? I have determination. I have the will to succeed. And I have the faith that everything is going to be all right. Okay, some would perhaps say this is a little naive, but nonetheless, these are good ingredients for success. Besides my toolbox, I was fortunate to see what my friends and colleagues had in their toolbox too. They were equally optimistic and had other valuable attributes that strengthened us as a team. So, together, we started contacting a bunch of people, and within 1 day, we managed to mount a full security team, schedule meetings with organizations, get translators, and get the permissions we needed to be at the front lines. Now, without going into too much detail, this journey right here is the most powerful experience that I've ever had in my life. But if it was not for that perseverance in a very difficult and scary moment, this would not have been possible whatsoever. Every single person here has a different journey. For some, success can come easy and quickly. For others, it can take a very long time. But one thing that I know for absolute certain is that if I had not failed before, the many times that I have failed, then I would not be standing here in front of you today. Failure is what shapes us into the human beings that we are. It's what determines what our character is really made of. So don't be afraid to fail. Today, I run a film production company. I run more than 20 film festivals around the world. And just last month, we opened an office at the One World Trade Center in New York and another one in Jakarta. We're 7 people at our headquarters in Copenhagen and more than 50 employees, volunteers, and interns around the world. I never studied film. I never studied business either. But I managed to combine the two through experiences, through determination, through a little bit of luck, but most importantly, because of perseverance. Never underestimate the power of perseverance. Now, before I finish, I promised that I was going to let you guys know what happened to that girl, Delia, when I was 10 years old. Well, Delia is actually in the audience here today. I invited her to come, as she's my girlfriend. We've been going out for almost a year now. So I guess my perseverance from back then really did pay off. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.